Waldport City Council meeting of August 13. Call to order, please. And roll.
Councilor Virtue?
Here.
Councilor Dunn?
I'm here.
Councilor Howland?
Here.
Mayor Woodruff?
Here.
Councilor Campbell?
Present.
A quorum is present.
Okay. We have the minutes of the July 9 council meeting.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as submitted.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second. Any discussion, corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we have a proclamation, or is it just on here for placeholder? All right. Public comments. Anyone wish to speak to the council? Please come to the podium and state your name. See nobody rushing forward. You want to do that now? Okay. We have a letter from a constituent, and since they couldn't be here today, they've asked that it be read into the record.
I am going to remove my mask because otherwise my glasses are going to fog up and I won't be able to read them. To the Waldport City Council, councilors, there are several people in South Lincoln County, pre-Waldport, 4 Yahats, and Toonseal Rock, that we know of having electrical disability and or sensitivities that cause debilitating and isolating conditions. Some of us having dealt with this allergy/injury and sometimes life-threatening illness for years. It has devastated our lives. We are still struggling to survive, to eke out a normal life, and are doing so in Waldport or along the coast. 5G/IoT will destroy us and make our lives even more difficult, if not impossible. We would like an opportunity to meet with you for a special session so that we can tell you our stories, explain our concerns, and perhaps one or two experts on 5G and radio frequency radiation could attend to present some issues. Eva Bortnick notified the City of Waldport in writing about her electromagnetic radiation, EMR, disability, and difficulty finding housing and a place to live and function. Considering the Americans with Disabilities Act, supported by medical documentation, the proposed antenna boosters in the parking lots, as was discussed at the June 11th, 2020 council meeting, or any wireless expansion in the city would be in direct violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act and our right to access. Safe alternatives are available. We need to stop seeing man-made EMR as benign simply because it's invisible. Please review the enclosed informational material and let us know when we may be able to have a special meeting with you. It will take time to give testimony, review issues, and we need special accommodation. We feel it is important to meet and discuss and give you an opportunity to understand all of the related issues surrounding wireless technology. Further, there are videos on the internet which address the issues. Here is one of testimony given at the Michigan State Senate Energy Commission hearing, https://youtube/yrvm1006 ITZYM. Thank you, Eva Bortnick, Waldport, Teresa Sperry, Waldport, Susan Greeno, Waldport.
Thank you. She has requested a meeting with us, so how do you want to handle that, councilors, or give it back to staff to decide how that should happen?
If she wants a meeting, yeah, I would. Just get back to staff.
Anybody have a different idea? Okay.
I will say I did speak with both the ADA and the U.S. Access Board, and unfortunately, though her condition can be considered a disability, there is no accommodation that the city can make for that condition, as it's not recognized as a accommodatable condition. To do so would be what's called a fundamental alteration, and so therefore there is no action we can take as the city.
Okay. So in light of that, I'm sure you've already replied that to her. So we leave it at that?
You've already talked to her then about it.
I have. I was actually surprised she's not here to, she was very upset with my response,
Yeah.
unfortunately, so.
Any other thoughts? Okay.
I'm sorry, but
I guess we'll just leave it at that then, unless you feel otherwise. Okay. Presentations, we get an introduction to our new city planner.
So I would just like to introduce myself.
Sure.
My family and I, we arrived here in early June, and I'm working with COG, the Oregon Cascades West Castle Government, and so we're looking to be here long term. We're excited. It's a 2-year contract. It started August 3rd, and so I'll be serving the community on Mondays and Thursdays.
Okay,
So let me know if you have any questions.
Monday and Thursday.
great. Welcome and thank you. Okay, first discussion item is Phase 2 and city buildings.
Excellent.
Dan?
So, as you're aware, the county has submitted an application for Phase 2 opening of the county to the governor's office, requesting a date of August 24th. I then sat down with staff and asked how we might look at what facilities we have closed currently that could be opened under Phase 2 and how we would accomplish that. The library has put together a opening plan for your consideration, and we also discussed the second piece of that is the community center and some of the challenges and ongoing operational constraints in doing that. So I guess I would open any questions to our head librarian who's here today on how that might work. And if not, we're just looking for direction on proceeding forward.
On upon Phase 3, are you still going to have no group meeting space available, or will there be group?
There'll be group meetings if that's how Phase 3 looks like with the governor.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
We're still really uncertain of what the phase, the governor's got really nice guidelines through Phase 2.
Mhm.
Phase 3 is still somewhat of a mystery.
Of course, of course.
So under Phase 2, groups of up to 25, right? Is that right? Is that
So
correct?
in Phase 2, groups of up to 25 in very specific conditions. Like
Right.
one of the examples is, this is one of our largest meeting spaces, and you can see that we're not near 25, but we're at about the maximum that we can actually have in groups that are socially distant that aren't members of the same household.
Right.
So the other consideration is most of the spreading events are occurring in group meetings in enclosed buildings that, are generally don't have great air turnover. So we, right now, are really recommending that we kind of stick to the low group sizes, or in case of the library, no group meetings per se. Really trying to still discourage those activities which are going to create spreader events.
Right. And the little meeting room that is in the library basically would only hold,
6 or
It only holds about 19, 20 people.
In
You know,
normal
we have
times,
the
yeah.
one wall opens up to allow us into the children's area,
okay,
but even with that, but because I shared an office and we have distance, we've actually moved that desk into the more room for now until we can have programs again. And it's also, we quarantine books, so that's another place we have to put books, because that's the only place we have.
yeah, yeah.
That's the thing, so.
So are you feeling comfortable with what you've come up with?
I think so. The staff, I've talked to the staff, they're anxious to get open again. It's what we do, so.
Right.
But, yeah, with some caution. And we've got our sneeze guards up and different things, some other precautions set up. Hand sanitizers everywhere.
How long do you quarantine the books currently?
We're quarantining about 24 hours, 1 to 2 days, depending on when they come in.
How do you feel about people that walk in without a mask and refuse to put on a mask when they come in?
Well, we will ask them to step outside, and we will get anything they need and bring it to them to the door. If they refuse, I'm not sure where we can go then. We had talked about that, but the governor actually says we can't do anything, so I don't know. Something that I had read, actually the county side said not to. So I don't know where I can go from there. If they refuse to leave, then what we're now.
Given the timeline and given our proximity to the sheriff, we'll probably have the sheriff's office come and talk to them.
Okay.
I did order some shields that the chamber, like similar to what the chamber has from the county, as well as we have paper masks to give out to anybody that comes in without one.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Any other questions? I think you're wanting a motion, right?
Yeah, for the library, and then I think there's some value in discussing the community center,
Okay,
not putting them together, if you will.
okay. So I'd entertain a motion on the library plan.
I move that we open.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. The community center is not quite so.
So this
Straightforward.
one's a little tougher. The community center doesn't have any dedicated staff. It's a large space that right now is serving a critical function. The state considers critical functions, there's a whole list of them, but one of them is serving meals to specific groups of people during this time. Meals on Wheels is one of those entities. So it's very important that the Meals on Wheels system and the ability to operate is protected. Right now, we're not operating any other groups running through the community center, and so we have some stability. And the Meals on Wheels site is not actually serving at that location, so that we don't have to worry about COVID tracing and an event that would close the meal site. One of the challenges is we don't, though we have some CARES money that we can do for cleaning, we really don't have the staffing or the ability to kind of maintain or patrol that group activity space such that I would be comfortable right now opening. We can come up with something, but I think we're going to spend a lot of resources doing so. Right now, I reached out to all the different groups that are listed here and asked for their plans. I've only received one response, which was from the Girl Scouts. And they indicated that if they were given a list of things to clean, that they might be able to clean and that they would be using it twice a month. We don't generally, for instance, the Girl Scouts actually do not pay anything, neither do the Cub Scouts. So I don't think that it's a cost recovery issue at this point. It's more just a functional issue of we really do run a risk if we open that space right now and too soon, given that its whole purpose is community gathering, the ability to kind of enforce social distancing, ensure that the spaces are adequately cleaned, and then at the end of the day, fundamentally ensure that Meals on Wheels is able to operate if there is an issue with one of the other users. So right now, we were kind of hoping to wait and see how opening goes and what the timeline for that looks like after the county moves, whether we see an upsurge in cases, whether we see any difference at all, and then what the situation's like in 3 or 4 months. Alternatively, we can move towards opening the facility in the building, but we do absorb some specific risks. We have, irregardless, some identified repairs that Scott and I have been working on in terms of the roof and in terms of some interior spaces, and that's going to take some time to get a contractor in there and get done anyways. So that being said, even if we did want to open under phase 2, in order to effect those repairs, we would really need to be pushing out a couple months at minimum anyways, unless we wanted to, well, we absolutely need to do the roof, but there's some other repairs that are pretty important to get done, and that we'd really like to do during the time that it's closed.
So are we still thinking about a community kitchen kind of thing? Commercial kitchen, whatever.
That was kind of the hope. One
Yeah.
of the challenges that we all saw in the last budget cycle is that we need to find a revenue source from the community center. And these groups aren't it.
Right.
In looking, and I will bring a proposal to you later, but it is my hope actually that if we can find a revenue source, that we actually look at some of these other community uses as no charge. The trick has been, how do we generate funds from there? And one of the ideas is making some fundamental kitchen changes that we might be able to lease out that as a commercial kitchen space for those who are creating meals for catering services or other functions. That has been a highly requested service in the past in the area, and there are very few commercial kitchens available that people can rent and use. It does require some investment, and we haven't put that package together for you yet, but it is a potential source of revenue for that building space. If and how we can turn it into it, I'm not entirely sure yet. And it would be, more importantly, not in direct competition with anybody else. I mean, I considered, leasing some of the offices in the front to, different businesses that just needed a short-term placement, but that really does compete with some of the other folks who have retail frontage. That's not what the city does. We really want to stay out of that. What we want to do is, pick up gaps where there isn't something that we might be able to provide.
So that doesn't require any kind of motion, obviously, since we're not doing anything.
No,
at
I
this
just,
point. Yeah.
if the council felt strongly about opening, we would change our plans, but I wanted to let you know where we were right now and kind of what we were thinking, and make sure that that was the will of the council.
Okay. Any thoughts, any of you?
Yeah, I'm just worried about the liability if we open too soon. And as the attorney, I'm always scared about liability. So I think it's good to keep it close, to tell you the truth. That's what I'm thinking.
It seems like you mentioned in the note something about that, and you were checking on that
Oh, yeah.
liability issue, right?
That is a broader issue.
Okay,
And I am waiting to hear
Okay.
many people have asked this question, and I think we're all waiting to hear a response. I know that a immunity package is part of the most recent discussions in the second round of funding that has been kind of held up at Congress. If that does include, that, it will answer the question
Yeah.
uniformly.
there's no other comments?
I guess I would just say that, like many of the restaurants that have done remodeling and repairs during the virus closure, this is encourage you to keep going in the getting repairs and maintenance done while it's vacant.
Yes, that is really our hope. Our hope is to have some time.
Yeah.
One of the challenges is it has been prohibitively difficult to get a hold of contractors this summer. Like
Yes.
many people were booked, and many people are taking advantage of exactly this time. We're hoping that that dies down a little bit and we can actually get some people to return our calls.
Yeah.
We are working very hard to keep that funding and those contracts local, by the way.
Okay, moving on to our next issue is short-term rentals.
So, Mayor Woodruff and Councilman Holland and I attended a presentation from Granicus. This is a company that takes the entire piece of the short-term rental question, from tax collection to identification to contact to code enforcement within the short-term rental code, the entire piece, and it puts it together in a web package that you then administrate, and they kind of do everything else. It allows you to kind of sit back and allow them to identify the pieces, and then you just take action. You're the one who does say, okay, yes, go ahead and send a letter of an issue, but it allows you to kind of sit back and let somebody else manage that aspect of it. Along with that, they do have a list of kind of best practices and pieces that cities have adopted. We took a look at that. I did not presume to bring that list forward this month because I think that I wanted to engage a conversation about what we might want to do and what we might not want to do. I know that some cities limit vacation rentals, some cities put some pretty onerous restrictions. I don't think Waldport has ever wanted to go that direction. But I do think in the past we've talked about ensuring that all vacation rentals must have trash service, for example, so that the vacation rentals aren't dumping in neighbors or in commercial spaces around town to get rid of their trash. There are some other kind of basic common sense ones about noise, about complaints, about remedies. The other piece that was interesting in the software is the number of rentals. So we have right now, I believe, 17 identified rentals in town that pay transient rental tax. Granicus identified 191 total advertisements and narrowed that down to what they believed was about 56 unique rentals. That would represent almost a threefold, fourfold increase in our currently accounted for rentals, and that represents people who are not charging or are charging and keeping a vacation rental tax, the transient rental tax that we have, which is at the city 10%, matching the county. So that could represent a fair amount of income. So what we're asking for today is the direction to start putting together that best practices list for you and get your input on what some of those issues might want to be. And then the second piece is we negotiated a contract with Granicus. They offered their service at $18,000 a year. It is fully refundable within the first 6 months of the contract. And they indicated that in their history, and I can't verify this, but in their history, and they do it for quite a few towns in the state and a lot down in California, that they've never actually had anybody use that money back guarantee. So I balked a little at the 18,000 and negotiated with them. It's now 11,000. They were able to winnow down some of the 191. One of the big costs is identifying all those listings and making sure. They were able to narrow that down a little bit so that they didn't have 191 of them to go through. And so they're offering the service for $11,200. I am asking for your permission to go forward with that contract now. They have also indicated that they've never had a situation where they didn't bring in more revenue than the contract cost the entity. And I would suspect that that will be true here. One of the things that we don't do that we were discussing as part of the best practices is bringing forward a resolution on the business licenses for vacation rentals. And that in itself would pay a good portion of the contract, especially if we reviewed the amount that we charge for vacation rentals. So I think overall, I think it's a win-win. And I think if we look at the staff time spent in the addressing of some of the issues with vacation rentals, this would be a win not only for us, but I actually think for the vacation rental management companies and the owners, because it makes things simple. It's a web portal. It's easy for them to register. They can even pay their taxes online. It becomes something fairly simple in terms of a problem. There's a complaint website that the citizens go to. They make a phone call, so the owner would get contacted after the service was able to determine the problem. It really does simplify it, and it reduces the staff FTE dedicated to spending time on vacation rentals in the city.
I think another benefit I see of it is that I think, if we get something in place so that our vacation rentals are managed well, then I think we don't get into all these battles that we read about in the paper all the time of all the arguments. I mean, not that everybody's always going to be happy, but I think, once people understand that problems are going to be dealt with, I think that kind of cools the water for the whole thing. And we don't so far have so many that it's ruining neighborhoods and that, fortunately. I don't know where it will go in the end, but we can deal with it as it develops as well.
I just wanted to say I've been following this software company for 3 years. I've been wanting to do this. This company this software started with a small company, and when they first wanted us to buy it, it was about $10,000 a year then, and it didn't have nearly the bells and whistles that they have now that we really could use to do it for $11,000. So I'm just really sold on it now for what it does or could do for us, and I'm really excited even more now than I was back then. since Granicus has bought it, they've really turned this into a great product. And I'm just really thrilled to, and really want to endorse it as much as I can, that for us to use this. And at least try it for 6 months. If it doesn't work out, we can, get our money back. And let's just try it for 6 months. I
And
think.
interestingly, one of the things that Granicus claims, and again, it looks like it's true, but the feds keep changing the guidelines on what the CARES Act money can be spent
Right.
for. But it looks like we can actually use CARES funds to pay for this contract.
Well, I'm not even sure that'd be necessary if the claim is that we're gonna recover more than.
Right.
I agree,
Yeah.
I agree, it may be moot.
What are the taxes for transient,
10,
10%
right.
of the
Of
the
the
daily
night,
rate or whatever?
Yeah.
It's $200 a night, it's $20.
So I have a question just about the numbers, because for the eclipse 3 years ago, we were going to be out of state, made a listing on Airbnb or one of those, and listed it just for a one-time thing, did some research, it said if we were doing less than 21 days a year or something, then most municipalities don't require you to register, but we had an impossible time getting our listing removed. My wife finally got it done 2 months ago. They make it really easy to list your property, and then they don't want to lose the listing, and it's a lot of hoops to jump through. So I'm just wondering, how many of the places, because ours did show up, I
Yeah, we
don't
don't
think
know.
it showed up on this list, but it did show up for years when it wasn't available.
But that wouldn't be our problem.
Well, I'm just saying, but if the 56,
Oh,
if
oh,
it's
oh, I-
substantially
oh, the
lower
56.
because there are people who aren't actually
Gotcha.
renting the property.
Well, and that's actually something that we're really curious about. This would give us an accurate count. And if it turns out that they do it and we have 20, then it's not likely that we're gonna continue with the software and we'll ask for our money back. And at least we now have the 20 that we know of.
Yeah.
So-
If it turns out that it's 34, well, we've doubled in number.
Plus, what we can also find out is if it's, say, a person has a 5-bedroom house and they're renting out each bedroom of the house, they can identify that too. Because some people do that too, for people that can't afford to rent a whole house.
Have they done logistics on seasonal?
Yeah, so they run it constantly. So you will see a scale of, they will go back and capture for months and months over time. And so we'll actually see a scale of the rooms, usage at a peak and down below and how much we're getting during the time. The fundamental tax, so in your case, for example, without actually having rented your room during the remaining time, there would be no tax payment. So it really would have not costed you as a vacation rental owner anything. This is really just ensuring that there's a mechanism for used vacation rentals where we are getting the tax, we are seeing an accurate picture of how much tax and how much usage they're actually generating, and it just keeps everybody honest, which is really the biggest advantage of it.
Of these 56 unique listings, and of which 17 are registered, are the 17 registered as like Vacasa or Meredith, or are they through a,
We have both. We have individual property owners that have registered. We have Vacasa, we have Airbnb, we have Meredith, Sweetwater. We have some companies that manage more than one rental. And,
right,
in my previous research, I showed that a lot of times the same house will be listed under 3 or 4 of those different entities. But Granicus has indicated they've narrowed it down, and they've gone through all that and know about that, and they've narrowed it down to 56 unique entities. So that's kind of interesting to me, but, if that's the case, then we do have other rentals out there that we should be
receiving some
keeping
revenue from.
track.
So those 39 other people are not
Correct.
registered with us. They show up on this Granicus
Yeah,
search, and they may be similar to like Karun's. Or-
could be, but
Okay.
we wouldn't know if we don't
Okay,
avail ourselves of the search.
so we should do it during our peak time and see whether or not the value's there. We will know by winter time whether or not this thing is viable, I would think.
And that's why, right now, we're poised to go ahead, basically today. And, they can get it up in place here pretty quickly. They're already starting to work through the 56 so they use an AI algorithm to narrow it down to, to capture all the video and pictures that are publicly available on these sites. And then they have somebody who actually verifies that, they are unique listings. And then they come back with a list and say, okay, here's what we've identified, here's the unique listings, here's the ones that you already have identified, and it becomes pretty easy.
What does the county charge?
10%.
10.
So it's the same. Well, I would make a motion that the city manager proceed with the contract with.
And I would happily second that motion. Second that motion. Oh,
Okay,
there's a
fine.
question from the
I
audience.
don't know what your policy is, can I?
Sure,
to
go
this
ahead.
Before you vote?
Go ahead.
My name's Jamie Michelle, and I'm a public policy officer for Sweet Homes Vacation Getaways. We happen to be located right here in Waldport and employ 45 local people. And I have been serving for several years now on the City of Newport's committees. We formed the most recent ordinance, and I now serve on a committee where it's like a steering committee, and we report to City Council, let them know how the current ordinance is working. And one of the new pieces to the new ordinance is that they hired Lodging Rev, which is actually the leader in this kind of software that you're talking about. And I'm sure you've done your homework, but if I could add a little food for thought, just from what I know from my experience, I've sat in on all the different meetings from the different companies and their pitch sessions and so forth. But just a little background. Your choice of host compliance actually is a concern, which is what I want to share with you. And here's why. The CEO and founder, Erlich Binzer, of Host Compliance or Granicus, he's a technologist, and so his goal was to be the first to market and to dominate the marketplace with this kind of software. Host Compliance is notorious for inflating the issues and creating problems in communities to create demand for their services. They've been found to get about 85% of compliance, and via Oregon, we're working with a consultant from Smart City Policy, and Smart City Policy often gets called in to untangle the mess when many, many, many cities wind up firing host compliance because they bungled up the whole program. And so in contrast to that, a little bit about Lodging Revs. Did you interview Lodging Revs? I'm just curious.
I looked at 5 or 6 different competitors.
Yeah.
I think
mean,
Lodging
I
Revs was one of them.
and stuff, but, so Lodging Revs, their CEO is Aaron Neer, and Aaron was the CFO of a destination management organization and has a background in working with cities. So it brings that twist and that background to the software program. They all work in a similar way. It's just about, finding the right relationship for you. But Lodging Revs is known to have 100% retention of their clients, and they have usually a 98 to 99% compliance rate in what they're scraping and finding. They're really highly respected in this field of software and often asked to speak as panelists on this subject. I just wanted to also put out a thought for you that, Newport's using Lodging Revs already, and I wondered if, they're already probably scraping the whole county on the software scrape. And I wonder if there wasn't a way to possibly, for the city of Waldport to piggyback on that and maybe save some money. So I just wanted to share that 2 cents.
You really looked at it, a lot of them take each individual entity as a separate contract. Originally, when we started talking with Granicus, for example, they looked at the county and then fed us down to a different salesperson when they realized that it wasn't the county that was doing this, it was the city. I think your points are well made. I do think host compliance has been purchased by Granicus, and Granicus is a pretty well-known municipality service provider. And we're actually looking at some of their other product lines in terms of some of the Unicode pieces that they deal with and some of the other tools that they have available to communities. So I think that some of the complaints, though well-founded, are, they're worth investigating. I don't want to dismiss them, but I think that, either way, with the tools that we saw in the pitch and how they work, I don't know that there would be a lot of quagmire that we'd get into under this contract. But, like you said, we have 6 months in which it's totally free. So we could walk away at any time and, pursue Lodging Rev or somebody else if we found that they were challenging to deal with or weren't accomplishing our goals.
Well, you state here that it's refundable, meaning that it's paid up front and then we ask for it back.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. And the piggyback idea, I started there with my thinking, because I thought if the county would do it for the whole county, and then each of us, could sort of piggyback on that, but evidently the software doesn't lend itself to that, because obviously that would, I think, would be better for all of us if we could do that, but
Don't worry about it.
doesn't seem to be the case at this point. So I think we had a motion and a second, but we are still in discussion. Any further thoughts or questions or comments?
Call for the question.
Let's
Okay.
vote.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we'll just hope this works really well for us.
Well, so, and I think what I'll ensure is that I report back to the council on how this is going.
Right.
And, keeping in mind Ms. Michelle's concerns, we will absolutely take advantage of that 6-month money-back guarantee if for whatever reason we find that they have increased our workload instead of reduced,
Right.
or if we find that they are creating issues for our vacation rental owners, because that's not what we want. This is really to make their lives easier,
Right.
to make our lives easier, and to just kind of keep everybody on the same playing field. There are large companies like Sweet Homes that are playing above and aboard, and there are some that are probably squeaking by thinking, oh, well, this is a competitive edge because I haven't, I'm not charging that city tax. So, and we also know that in the past, we've had homes where people have had, regular complaints over the patronage. This does give us an ability to address those without having to, run out there in the middle of the night and try to figure it out, which we don't have staff.
So we will be, as Dan indicated, we will be, looking at what the code should be, the restrictions and that, and I know that you're also very interested in, making sure that those are balanced between, what's necessary for a good operation from both sides, so.
I just appreciate the chances to speak to you. I just want to offer years and years of experience into your conversations.
I appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Greg, years of advocating, and it came
You
to
know what, I'll
fruition.
contact you because I think if we could talk, maybe we could get some of, I'd like to use some of your language, hopefully we can.
I would love to help.
I'll email you.
Oh.
Okay, the next item is leak detection and system proposal.
All right, so one of the first things I want to do is apologize. One of the numbers on here is incorrect, and it makes a difference. The warranty for 20 years is actually 10. So to kind of give you a little bit of background, the Public Works just completed a leak detection through the system. And I will say, since this was our first leak detection, with the exception of 3 big leaks that they've been trying to track down, our system was very tight. Our system was very well put together and is in relatively decent shape. We did have 3 big leaks that represented quite a bit of water being lost, and one which was just really hard to find. And once they were able to find that, that really helped. We had another one that was actually in Keedy Wayside. The reason that there was no water at the spout was because there was a leak there. And so by identifying those leaks, we did really button up the system to the point of about $158,000 worth of yearly water. If you look at what it costs us to produce that water and bill it out, that's how much of that water was being lost to the leaks. And so the guys are currently going through right now and taking care of the smaller ones, but the big ones have been addressed. However, it took a lot of time to track down these leaks. And when we finally brought in American Leak to do this, it was about $12,000. So I had been, in the process of looking at the meter project, meter replacement project, we had been investigating some of the different meter suppliers and the different technologies. And one of the things that really stood out was a built-in system that does on-demand leak detection. Similar to the AMI system, you press a button and it tells you where, if there's a leak at a person's residence. This tells you system-wide where a leak is, and using certain technology about exactly where to find the leak, so that you don't lose. I mean, we lost about 3 weeks or so hunting down those big leaks. In just, that's all Public Works was doing because it was really a big concern. So there's not only the water loss, but there's the time loss. And so I started looking at the system, saying, let's price it out. We have funds available right now because of the water tank settlement, where we might be able to put a system, a legacy system like this in, that would give us good information and really allow us to take advantage on a daily basis and ensure that we didn't have this type of development. I was very enthusiastic about that until starting to look at some of the numbers. And even when I wrote this recommendation, I was still pretty enthusiastic about it. However, when you cut the warranty period down to 10 years and you have the recurring cost of $6,000 a year, it started making it tough. So Scott and I actually met this morning, and I believe that I can say we're kind of on the same base right now. I'd like to amend my recommendation, and I'd like to make it this. I'd like to suggest that the council direct me to move forward with a leak detection system if we can negotiate the price down. I've had reasonable success in some of the other services that we've looked at in getting the costs down. I don't know whether we'll have success in doing that here or not. At its current pricing, it comes out to amortized about $14,000 a year. We could do a leak detection every year for that price with the professional unit. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be on demand, but we could have a one-time leak detection. Scott indicated that our city engineer has said that a 2 to 3, even 4-year cycle would be appropriate and similar to what a best practice would be. That being the case, really I would not be comfortable recommending the system until we can get that cost down to about half of what it is currently. Because I do think there are some other non-tangible savings besides the water savings of not having to do it every year but being able to react right away. I do think there are some non-tangible savings in FTE and manpower in hunting down these leaks, and the ability to respond and have a good sense that we're not throwing water away. If you remember, we were at about a 26% water loss, and I think a good leak detection system and a good modern meter system will really bring that number way, way down and get us well below the threshold where we need to be.
So a week of Public Works time has got to be a fairly big number as well.
Yes.
How long were these leaks happening,
Well, there's a lot of small leaks in the system throughout. Some of those add up to a lot. Most of them are tiny leaks, so they've been leaking for a long time. We randomly find leaks. According to the leak detection, American leak detection guide, that's all he does, go around to municipalities. He said if he had to kind of rate our system, when we told him we don't have any record of doing a previous leak detection, when to fix it, schedule it in, give it overtime, stuff like that, but, I couldn't actually tell you on the small leaks, they could be long-term, they could be short-term. The big leaks are fairly recent because we've noticed the increase in our water loss lately. So,
So the three large ones were a recent, and we just noticed a lot of water was being lost.
yes, so we've had a gradual increase the last, over what we were originally seeing for leak detection, or for water loss. We actually started seeing a gradual increase about 6 to 8 months ago. It really picked up about 4 months ago, and originally we were blaming it on, because of the unknown with the pandemic, with everybody staying home, originally it actually really started increasing about the time the pandemic started. So originally we looked at it, we viewed it as that until we started seeing longer term statistics and 3 weeks into looking for them, we found that what we thought was 1 week was actually 3 weeks combined.
Okay, so these are relatively recent, within the last half a year, let's say. Have we got logs from when this may have happened in the past? I mean, is this an every 3-year thing? Did it happen 10 years ago? When have we had big leaks like this before? Or do we know?
Oh, actual leaks themselves?
Yeah, big ones like these three.
We probably do about 25, 30 a year. We generally find, these were really hard ones to find, so they just kind of disappeared. A lot of our leaks show up through, a lot of the time it's either through our meter reader doing meter reading, or our guys out doing maintenance. We'll see water, we'll be driving around, we'll see something suspicious. A lot of times our community calls in with water characteristic issues, where they notice water. So a lot of the time we find it through that stuff.
So this wasn't that rare, it just was hard to find.
2 to 3 times a year, we probably have to actually go out and search for a big water leak. The last one that we had a really hard time was about 4 or 5 years ago. And we spent about 3 to 4 weeks trying to find that one as well. So that's kind of how often we do that.
Yeah, this one was tough because it was actually a couple 3 big leaks. One of them was up on Nelson Wayside Drive, and you could hear water, but unless you stopped and walked the entire way, you wouldn't have figured out that water was coming from a pipe because the road looked fine and hadn't washed out.
And then in addition to that, one of the things I've talked to you about, we've been looking at the ecologicals for a while, and it's really up in the air which way is better. And I couldn't, as a health source director, I won't recommend one way over another to do leak detection because of cost. One way is better, but it costs more. But it also, with long-term leak detection, you can actually see when they start as a small leak, and so you can schedule in as that leak gets bigger. You can see the leak, and you can see the size of the leak, and you can schedule it into the normal operation schedule. Whereas with the way we currently do leak is reactive, so it generally, we wait for it to completely break and saturate, and then we fix it at whatever time of day or holiday or whatever time that is. To fix it, which generates overtime, which is also not as that.
Oh yeah, I remember that one across the street from me.
So,
Okay.
are you looking for a, authorization of not to exceed $45,000 for the,
What I'm looking for is permission to go cost down, to go forward, and then bring it back and say, okay, we got the cost down to what we think is manageable. I was intending to bring this forward and say, yeah, we want to do this, it's $6,000 a year, but I think it's well worth it, and amortized out, it was going to be about, 9, and I thought, oh, that'll be great. I really think, that if we can get the cost down about half of where we are right now in terms of yearly cost and overall system cost, then it starts to pay for itself. I think beyond that, it starts to stretch it a little bit, and I'd have to put together a lot more numbers. So I had put this on the agenda with the idea that, oh, this was gung-ho, this was great, and this was going to be good. And really, when I realized that we would be looking at replacing some of the hardware in 10 years, now, and I have to look, some of that hardware in 10 years may not be the full 80,000, that might be only 30,000, that might change the numbers. But I didn't want to spend any more time going forward and bringing this back to you with a expenditure out of contingency unless I had your permission to do it. Just because it's a large number, it's an expenditure out of contingency from the water fund. And, you know, we have lots of priorities in the water fund. I do think that this is an important one, and if we can get the cost down, I think it's still a very valuable one to do. But at the end of the day, all of them are very valuable to do, so.
Well, your cost recovery, you say, is at 4 years or less, right?
If you take the water loss and the time that some of the water is leaking with big leaks and before we do, you know, a good leak detection, yeah, cost recovery, I believe that the system would pay for itself in that 4 years.
Okay, so that number doesn't have anything to do with a 10-year warranty.
No, it doesn't.
That's going to be recovered in 4 years irrespective.
Yes, but that's, yes.
Okay. And then a warranty is the company that installs this is going to warrant it for 10 years.
The batteries die out in 10
Is that
years.
what it is?
Yes.
Okay, the batteries die. So we know that it's got a life of 10 years.
There is a portion of this system, and we have to figure out exactly how much, but there's a portion of this system that in 10 years we would be replacing.
I got you. Okay, so it's not so much a warranty, that's the life expectancy.
Yes.
You might get, you know, like, it'd be like a car warranty. You got a 5-year, 100,000,
You might get 20.
you might, right. But this is not the case, because these batteries are gonna wear out.
Some of it will be, but some of it absolutely
Okay.
won't be.
All right, so I guess I don't like the word warranty.
So.
I hear you.
Yeah,
Within 10 years, they'll replace it. That's
Okay.
the,
okay.
Gotcha, okay.
To add to that, and Dan might actually got this answer, but I actually just met with Drew, our salesman yesterday. I haven't got a chance to talk to Dan. The original understanding I had as of yesterday was that their total replacement, the actual device in the system, a total replacement in 10 years. According to Drew, the original ones they came up with were still serviceable for the batteries. So I haven't actually got an answer for you on that unless you.
I haven't either. So, and that is the type of thing that as we discover, we may be able to say, hey, wow, yes, it is 40,000 or, you know, 80,000, but in 10 years, I only have a $10,000 bill, not another $80,000.
Gotcha.
And now that amortizes out to about 7,000.
Okay, so then it might be something that's replaceable by us versus having the company do it.
Right, so if they're filled serviceable like the original ones. Drew's not the master ecologics guy, he's our salesman for Mueller, or for Consolidated, who sells the Mueller products, but we're actually working with a guy from Mueller on this as well. That's who Dan's working with. According to Drew, because I thought that it was a direct replacement like a meter is, and Drew corrected me yesterday, and the original ones were field serviceable, which was just take them apart, putting a battery in, and put them back together, obviously with their batteries. But he wasn't positive that they're still that way. His understanding is they are. He wanted us to check with the actual meter on that. So if that's the case, it would be fairly inexpensive to update those information.
Go ahead.
What part of this is negotiable then? The installation, it looks like it's a set fee, so what is it, the service contractor?
Well, that's just it. Right now, this is not actually the firm number. This was the ballpark number so that I could bring this to you.
Okay,
The firm number should be fairly close as they've spec'd out the system and they get the final number. My hope was that at this number, given a total replacement, say we had to do $80,000 in 10 years, I was not comfortable. Scott and I both sat down and we both were not comfortable with that number given the service cost. We haven't negotiated with the sales team at all. So I don't know if that 80,000 is a firm fixed number or if there's flexibility. As we've seen in some of the other things that I've negotiated, there tends to be some flexibility. And I think I'm pretty good at that piece of it. The other part is if we determine that there's only a $10,000 cost in 10 years, and that at 30 years, we might be looking at the full 80,000. That amortizes the whole system over a much longer period of time. I'm looking at it, what is our yearly cost going to be after this one-time expenditure? Right now, it's 6,000 plus the depreciation, which is another 8, which makes it too high. However, if we can get it to 6,000 and then another, say, 1,000, or even get the 6,000 number down to, say, 4,000 plus, a couple thousand in amortization, then it starts to be an attractive system that really provides our benefits.
Okay.
So I kind of understand, I think, what you're saying about your hesitation now compared to, just hiring a one-time $12,000 leak detection. But I do think that I don't have a good sense of overall in the last 12 months what it cost in overtime and holiday pay and general how many FTE were used in a year to pursue that, because it seems like it's close. It's close now with the numbers the way they are if we don't include labor.
So, in all honesty, it probably is pretty close. As Mark pointed out, depending on how long some of these leaks run, the system, I think, would actually pay for itself without labor, without any other savings, within about 4 years. So I think there's some value in the investment. However, I don't know that we couldn't get a good percentage of that value by contracting and doing every other year leak detection service by American Leaks, where we'd get pretty close to a good recovery. So given that case, I was uncomfortable, looking at that potential, essentially $14,000 a year to replace the system in 10 years. I was uncomfortable at that price point. If I can get it down to a reasonable price point and be able to bring back some financials that show, no, this actually does make sense, I think it's a worthwhile investment.
Well, there's, like you pointed out, the overtime and holiday pay, whatever, because the other is sunk cost, as you always say. But the other savings, so if you only have them come every 2 or 3 years, obviously there's leaks that are going on during that time that you're losing revenue on, and I don't know how you quantify that, but it has to be part of the overall equation, I would think.
Yes.
So.
And that's why I'm not asking you to forego the program. I'm not torpedoing the program.
Right.
I actually think the program has merit. What I'm suggesting is give me permission to go ahead, but with the direction that it's got to be cheaper than it is right now. Because I would really struggle to bring this back to you and say that this, at this price, is the best value.
And I wouldn't be locked into, cutting it in half, but better.
Yes.
And
I guess
then with those other factors.
that's where I'm at too,
Right.
is like, if we got a 25% savings
Exactly.
over what's listed, to me, we're really close, and it seems like I would still lean toward purchasing it at this price.
Yeah.
Because of the water and the labor.
Right.
So if we save 25% off of that, to me, that.
So much the better.
But I'm always in favor of negotiating and saving money. Like,
Right.
sure.
But not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, and I think
because-
that's why I was amending my recommendation. My recommendation today was, honestly, as you see, let's go, let's do this. It's a good idea. It has a great payback period. It's valuable.
Yeah.
I clarified that, and why I made it a longer discussion than what would have occurred normally, is that I do think that there's some merit in looking at those costs, because it was not as cut and dry when I looked at some of the numbers. From a financial background standpoint, it was not a absolute must-have. And it does encumber the city with a $6,000 yearly charge that we don't currently have right now in the water fund. Every time we add one of those little pieces, I know that at some point we're going to be looking at a fairly major water bond to do the work that we have to do, and we're looking at a substantial increase in water user rates. There's no way around that. The plant has to be, these are things that we have to do. And so I'm very careful about adding on anything that, at the end of the day is going to incur additional costs.
I think this project will probably is one of those that could be paid for out of one of the other, those SDC funds rather than just the water, the basic water fund.
It could be a capital project. I think the other important piece to look at about this project in itself is that it very well has the potential to, stay on top of leaks, and it may save us more than we would have spent in water production.
Yeah.
And we won't really have a good sense of those numbers for years, unfortunately. I absolutely think that that's the case, but I would have to have a lot more data from previous years that we didn't really collect well, and is not electronically just simple to gather. And it might not, but I think right now, if we can get it a little cheaper, it'll be close enough that it's worth it. But I really struggle at the current price and a 10-year total replacement. If they're user serviceable, that changes the equation entirely.
So do they, is there a comparison to a similar sized city that's had the system for 5 to 10 years that we can?
That's actually one of the hopeful selling points that Scott brought up today, is there really aren't a lot of these around, so we might be able to make this a demonstration project.
There you go.
And get a considerable discount so
Yeah.
that they can point to Waldport and say, look, Waldport did this and look at all the benefits.
Yeah.
And that's one of the, there's a few things, there's some unknowns. One of the things that, my part of it was actually coming up with the price, and the reason we have not a proposal price, but an estimate price, is because to get the actual final proposal price, includes some CAD work on their side. I didn't want them to spend a lot of money generating a map if you guys weren't interested in purchasing it. And then the other piece was, this is a fairly new product in the world of water. So going back into statistics, if we were trying to look at how much we're spending on this stuff over the last 10 years, we haven't evaluated that because the way we're doing it is actually industry standard. So we've never really looked at other options. So we haven't really started generating data to see if there's other options. So that's why there's a lack of data on how much would this save us. It's a new product. New to the water world product, it's still not, it's not like it came out yesterday, but I think Mueller started working on this, they've been working on it for years, but it's just now starting to pick up stride in communities.
So is it something that is being used in Europe and just coming here?
Mueller looks at it, so there's different companies that provide meter systems. Mueller's one of them. Mueller's one of the meters we're looking at. Mueller they do hydrants and they do full water systems. They pretty much produce everything. They produce everything you need for a water system. So they're looking at water systems as a whole instead of just items in a water system. A lot of the other manufacturers they kind of specialize in one item in a water system. And so with that was one of Mueller's goals was looking at a whole system, how can we meter it and how to talk to leak detection and how to talk to everything and start really getting a grip on a water system. They started producing these different ideas of how to get a grip on a whole system.
So you want a directive from us to kind of go forward and see if you can get a lower price? Is that what you're?
So, as we did look at some other large expenditures in the past, and there was some hesitation over COVID, I didn't want to spend a lot of time negotiating with sales and putting together some analysis and everything if there was not kind of the background interest in spending the money. I think it's money we're spending if we can justify it, but I didn't want to. You can burn salespeople's goodwill, and I do know that we want to keep a relationship with these folks, and I didn't want to have them spin their wheels and put together, as Scott said, there's some work they have to do to really give us the pricing on that system. And I didn't want to spend all of that time and energy if there really was not interest in even going forward a little bit. So that's why I was kind of looking for direction of like, yes, this is something that we're interested in spending, and kind of get a comfort level.
It sounds to me like we are
Yeah.
interested
Yeah, we're
in spending
definitely
it,
interested,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And whatever you can come up with, we will be waiting with bated breath.
Okay, excellent. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay. The next item is the safe routes to school, which we have discussed before, but we have a little bit of update on it, so.
This one is pretty simple. So the Safe Routes to Schools grant here is due in the next few weeks. We are proposing a sidewalk and some other work along Crestline Drive from essentially the school down to about Range. I'm going to be putting together the package as the engineer's getting me some reports. The sidewalk is on the east side instead of the west side. That was a fundamental change and is going to cost us a little engineering money, and that's on me, I apologize. But I thought that a sidewalk on the side where you had 30 crossings of driveways, that you had to rip up all of the drainage that's over there, and that you had to cross, I think it's Green that's down by your place. I thought that did not make near as much sense as a virtually unbroken sidewalk on the other side of the road that would provide a nice, stable, nobody's going to back out into you walkway for the citizens as they get down to the school, and that it would also then precipitate a discussion with the county and with ODOT about a traffic control at the school area that might provide a stop sign or some additional traffic control to allow a safe crossing, which has been expressed time and time again as a concern. The county also did add some additional walk space on Crestline on the same east side.
Right.
So it actually does make sense. So what I'm specifically looking forward here is part of the scoring is a public process. And I think we've done a lot of outreach and we've discussed this, but I just wanted an affirmation motion from the council to go forward for this.
I make a motion, we go forward with this.
Nice second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Our score's a lot higher this year. I think I read it was like 3 something last year.
So yes, our score will be higher this year. I will say it's going to be more competitive. And I will also say that based on my analysis, if it is more competitive, we likely will be submitting it again the following year. Our biggest challenge is some of the stratification points that last year really would have distinguished us this year are lumped all together. They changed the scoring system, and many locations are going to be able to get that. In discussions with some other entities as well, there are points that we're going to lose simply because the road doesn't have enough cars, isn't as wide, and we haven't had a fatal accident. And it's horrible to think, oh God, if we had a fatal accident, we'd get more points. But the reality is those are 3 things that we can't fix. And so that represents effectively 65 out of the 500 points right there. And so because of that, we do have, we are scrambling to get those last few points that we can, but we are going to be constrained. And if it is more competitive and that number raises at all, we're right on that threshold. And while I hope that we're very competitive and it's a compelling product, we may end up getting feedback and submitting the same thing year after year. We did put in it's going to be called the Sidewalk to Nowhere for a while. We did put in some funds for the small cities allotment. And part of that was a chunk of sidewalk on Range. And I'm taking a little bit different tact from my predecessors. My predecessors always wanted to do it in one big piece. I don't think that we'll ever get the sidewalk done necessarily unless we get large grants like small cities. So I'm actually looking at doing it in small chunks. We were able to fit in a chunk of the sidewalk on a small city allotments, and my goal is to every year through various different funds keep working on chunks of sidewalk down Range and down Crestline until 10, 15 years from now it's done. And my hope is that people will start to see that come into place and realize the benefits, and then that will kind of cascade into a more tangible result. More importantly, my real hope is that the funding agencies will see that we've gotten a quarter of it done, and they'll see the value in continuing it down, and we'll be able to take care of it that way as well.
How long have we been discussing sidewalks?
20 years ago, I joined the
Exactly.
planning commission in Waldport trying to get sidewalks
Yeah.
along Crestline Drive.
Yep. Okay. So you have what you need for that?
Yes.
Okay. Next item is water shutoffs and a support program.
Okay, so you will remember that back in, let's see, March or April, we as a council voted to suspend water shutoffs for the city during the COVID crisis for a couple months. And we kind of extended that longer than the council had agreed to. Now we're at a position where we are actually starting to get complaints from property owners who are renting their properties, where the rentals have not paid the water bill for quite a while and are racking up fairly substantial water bills. And that comes back on the property, not the renter. So therefore, you know, our method of final collection is a lien against the property. So this has created some tension between property owners who feel like they can't shut off, or asking us to shut off the water. And we're in a situation where that's really a landlord-tenant dispute, but we're in the midst of it because we are the water supplier. I will say that I have been told, I haven't verified this myself, so I apologize if I'm incorrect, but I have been told PUD is now turning off power for failure to pay. And so the question for you now is, we have about 35 or 3.5% of our 1,400 meters that have not paid. That represents, I think, just about 50 or so of them. I'd have to go back and do the count again. And about half those are rentals, and only a small fraction of those are people who are actually complaining about it right now. But we do have, you know, quite a few accounts that are, you know, significantly in arrears, and it might be worth coming up with a plan so that these people don't dig themselves into a hole that they cannot get out of, which, you know, is a very distinct possibility. I do want to be respectful of the challenges with, especially with unemployment running out, and some of the other labor issues that are happening right now, and I think that's a worthy discussion. I also recognize that, you know, we don't want to end up owning people's houses because they couldn't pay a water bill.
In the past, when I was newly out of the military, our family struggled and had to get assistance for utilities a couple decades ago, and we had to bring a shut-off notice. So I'm just wondering if there's any benefit to people getting some form of assistance for bills of actually having a shut-off notice.
There certainly could be.
Even if our intent isn't to rush to turn the meter down off, but actually giving the shut-off notice to see if that helps them find assistance to be able to pay the bill. Or
So I know there's some pots of funds that go through cities to help small businesses. I don't know if there's any that go through cities for this.
So it's called revenue replacement, and I have not found any fund that allows for revenue replacement yet. Matter of fact, most of the different funds that I've seen specifically prohibit cities from using them for revenue replacement, so that the cities don't just take advantage of the fact that they can bring all of their delinquent accounts up to bear. And we did have about 5 of the accounts, by the way, that were delinquent prior to COVID that are still delinquent.
Still, yeah. Well, and we probably don't have any way of knowing that, but probably if they're not paying the water bill, they're probably also not paying rent, perhaps, because people can't shut off they can't evict people either, so.
so do we have a plan in place, or has this been thought through what will happen at the point we say, okay, we're not gonna just let this go indefinitely? Is there a repayment plan for the people whose bills are 6 months worth of water? And because I don't know that we can expect them to drop although my water bill, I looked at like these accounts that are up to $200, and I was like, oh, 9 of us living together, it's like, that's my water bill for 1 month.
So we actually, so that when I first started, we had some, we skipped meter reading for a month due to COVID, and we also had some pretty large bills that we sent to people accidentally. Councilor Campbell got one that was particularly high. And so we do a review now when we get the large bills. And there are a number of just large accounts, 9 people living in a home, or golf courses, or, a lot of the businesses. There are a series that we just look at, and we set a threshold of all that we want to review, just so we can be clear, okay, these are ones that are pretty high. We want to make sure that we don't have any that are 50,000, 100,000, that would be just ridiculously too high. So we do look at all the large bills every month. It doesn't take long, and you can see if there's a huge change from prior months.
When you've got 50 and you say 20 of renters, that means 30 are not renters, they're the homeowners, and they're not paying it.
Yes.
Don't we shut them off?
Right now, we have not been shutting anybody off.
So we lien them.
But just because they're homeowners doesn't mean they aren't experiencing the same
right.
difficulties
Right.
renters. But putting the lien on
Putting the
against
lien-
the person who hasn't paid the water bill and owns the house makes more sense.
Right. So at some point in time, they'll either have to start making payments, or when they sell, we'll recover.
This
In
is
the
what.
meantime, they're using water
Yes.
for nothing.
This is why, so if you remember back, the agreement was that we would not do shut-offs for a period of time.
I got that.
Right.
And so this really is, this is an issue that we should have brought back probably 2 months ago or a month ago, to say, okay, are we going to continue this process? So one of the things that we need to be told is, are we going to continue the no shut-off policy?
Right. Well, we should,
And if not, how do we want to, if so, how do we want to deal with this particular issue? And I think I made a suggestion in the staff report. And if not, if we are going to start shut-offs, then we need to, and staff can come up with probably a year-long, we'll take whatever you owe, divide it by 12, and you have a year to pay it in equal installments. That's a fairly innocuous, allows it to happen within the fiscal year, or within a year process.
Well, I'm just wondering if we just sent out shut-off notices without some rush intent, how many of the accounts would get current just with that kind of reminder?
I imagine a significant number of the accounts, if they got a shut-off door hanger, would pay up. The problem is if we're not actually shutting off water, it's, it might allow some to seek assistance, but I don't want to cry wolf. I'd rather call them and say, hey, do you need a shut-off notice? Would that help you? Rather than, put notices out that we're not going to follow through on.
I know, but why don't we follow through then?
That's what I'm asking for your, that's why I'm coming to you.
My recommendation would be give a 60-day notice to either make due or make arrangements to make payments, or on November 1, you're done.
That's why I'm bringing this to you.
Give them forewarning that it's imminent. Make arrangements to start making payments, and you can work it out, X amount of dollars per month. It may take a year for them to make it up. Let's say, for example, their bill is $300, and I can't pay $300, but I can pay you $20, or whatever, whatever you guys work out. I mean, the hospitals do that with you at times. And you say, look, if you don't make an arrangement to start making payments or have it paid in full by November 1, you're done.
Yeah, we're happy to do whatever the council desires.
Now, as far as the renters, you're right, the landlord's got to deal with it. I've solved that problem. I just pay the water bill, and then I charge them accordingly. But that's
But if they don't
the
pay,
own, I
then
know,
you're still in.
but it's still the owner's responsibility to make sure that things are taken care of.
But you,
I'm listening out there, and I think what would help is, we're not even sending out the past due notices. if we were sending out those past due notices saying that they're this far behind, because once people start getting those past due notices, they come in and start paying.
Well, that's the point.
It narrows it down so we don't have to do as many shut-offs.
Well, that's a good idea.
So we've been skipping both those steps.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That red stamp on that
Yeah.
water card is very, it gets your attention.
Hey, make it a 90-day thing. Say just, hey, we're bringing it to your attention. You are now in arrears. You've got you have 90 days to make arrangements to either come in full or make arrangements to make payments.
I like that idea. I mean, I think
Yeah.
they at least need to get a hold of us and say, hey,
Yeah.
we can't pay it, but we can pay they have to make arrangements. If they don't, then they could be subject, so.
None of us want a situation where there's some small kids that
No, of course
can't
not.
get a drink or take a bath.
Right.
But, on the other hand, we have to, the city can't not pay its bills and,
Well, mortgage companies and all the other companies are doing it right now. They're not saying you can't pay. What can you pay? So they're working out
Right.
deals. I think we should do
So-
that.
Yeah, and we're
Okay.
very happy
So the
to work
next
out a
bill-
payment
The
plan.
next bill's coming out in September 1st, or whatever, the first week of September. Are we monthly? So you've got September, October, November. If it's not made arrangements by December 1, you're done.
Rita wants to comment.
Well, one of the issues that we're facing, or that we are, that is going to be complicating this problem is we're dealing with the past due amount, but we're also dealing with the monthly bill.
Right?
Right.
But the
Yeah.
past due amount, if we haven't been sending notices, and I can't believe a person doesn't know that they're in arrears. I mean, if they haven't paid their bill, they've got to know, I haven't paid my bill. So we just bring it to their attention, because of the situation, we've been lenient, and I don't know how you want to word it, but it is time for you to start getting current. Please make arrangements to start making payments on the arrearages.
But the
Yeah,
bill
I'm sure.
now does show a past
It
due
shows
now.
past due.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
sure, okay, so,
So we're just not charging interest, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not
We don't-
stamping
we don't
it
need
with
to
a.
charge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
we
We're
aren't
not-
charging, we aren't charging anything.
we're not
Right.
charging interest. I
Right.
mean, that's,
So it's
Right.
just the straight
Right.
fee that's due. We currently also, with the payment agreements, we do have a payment agreement, system set up where you can pay X amount on your arrearage
mhm.
and your current bill.
Right.
There you go.
Right.
To keep it
Right.
moving
Well,
forward.
that seems reasonable.
So what
And
is
current
the,
those, if we set up a payment arrangement with a renter, it has to have permission of the
from
property
the owner?
in order to do so.
Right.
We
Okay.
can't just set it up with the renter, it
Right.
has to, the property
Right.
owner has to agree to it too, because ultimately,
Right.
they're responsible.
And I can't imagine
So
they
that's my
wouldn't.
point. They are ultimately
Yeah,
responsible,
right.
irrespective of what their relationship is with their renter, because the lien's gonna go on them.
Right.
Yeah.
So why would they not
They would.
agree to it?
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't.
but if you're making a 12-month payment agreement and their lease runs out in 3 months, they might, the property owner might want a
Yeah.
different payment arrangement, but
Yeah.
True.
But that they could work out with their renter, that is not something that the city would need to be involved
I definitely think sending out the stamp past due
It'll allow them to at
notices
least call in.
on the next billing.
So I think the action item here is whether the council is directing the city to resume shut-offs. We can come up with, I think we've gotten direction in terms of the timeline, but both shut-offs and late fees is a question. And that's where we really do need council action to resume those pieces.
So what about the late fees? Do we want to include that, or if they've
Well,
signed up for?
I wouldn't go that,
No.
let's just
That's
try
what
and
I
get them
think, not-
current.
Right.
Yeah, just
Let's just try and,
Unless they don't make any action, then maybe the late
Right.
fees are appropriate. But if they're setting up a payment plan, I would not want
Go
to.
ahead.
The issue that I see is, I don't believe our software is sophisticated enough to recognize the difference
Okay.
between someone who's making payments and someone who's not making
Okay.
payments when it comes to applying those penalties.
Okay,
So, yeah, it's,
Okay.
um,
Well,
no, it is set up so that when we do charge late fees, the late fees are only charged on the current billing, not on the past due billing. That's the way we set it up, so that we weren't charging late fees on late fees on late fees, you know, usury or whatever it's called. So it is already set up so that, for instance, if they didn't pay their past due bill and they've got $300 in arrears, their bill this month is $52.50. The late fee is 5% of the $52.50, not the $300.
okay.
So,
Can't we
so
do it
keep
with
that in mind with your
Okay.
decision on late fees.
Right.
Well,
Because we're not charging late fees on
Right.
everything that's been charged so
well,
far.
I would recommend we don't even do a late fee, we just try to get them to come current on their back, arrearages.
Well, and I might go a little different if that we didn't charge anybody. I mean, part of our notice to them as to what we're doing would be if you bring it up, current within 90 days, I think is what we've sort of talked about, that there would not be any late fees. But after that point, then anybody would be charged late fees.
No, I'm going even in
You
a
don't wanna
different
go that-
direction, because
yeah.
I'm not sure that some people that have accumulated that big of a number can get current in 90 days. The 90 days, in my view, is the cutoff of make an arrangement.
Yeah.
And I would even go so far as, don't do percentages, just say, it's $10 or it's 20 or come up with a number beyond. Because if your software is going to be, 5% of this number or that number and everybody's number is different, it would seem,
That's exactly the way it's set up, and it was
It
set
is.
up that way by resolution.
Right,
It was a decision of the council that it would be 5% of the current bill,
right.
not of the past due, but of the current bill.
okay, what's our goal? To try and get back the money that hasn't been
Yes,
paid?
right.
Right.
Okay.
Get people
Okay.
paying again.
I just think I'm not a techno geek, so I don't know anything about that crap, but it just seems to me like, say, look, here's an arrangement. $10 a month, you have to stay current with your current bill. You've got 90 days to either pay it off or come up with some sort of an arrangement. You've got two different bills. You got your current bill, which is varying, and you've got $200 in arrearages. $10 a month for 10 months will get that $200 done, but you have to stay current on, whatever. If it's
$20 a
What-
month.
whatever, it is. Well, whatever, yeah, $20 a month for 10 months. Okay, so my numbers were wrong, but you got the point.
Mhm.
I think what we're doing, we become, you have to be stern without being asses. Okay,
Yes.
in my view.
Yeah.
And,
So how does the software handle, if everybody's got a different payment plan, how does that gonna work as far as the software
Well,
is
we have to
concerned?
track that.
you don't give
So
everybody a
always that-
different payment plan, you give
You know,
them like
we have
three options.
We have a couple of payment plans out there.
Oh, you
for
do?
Okay,
people
so
who
we
have-
just stick to
Okay.
those?
Yeah.
Or if they're, would they be appropriate?
We have a couple of them that have been set up, to pay $100 a month plus their current bill or whatever. We've got
Okay,
a couple
well,
of people who haven't adhered to that either.
Right. But that's
Well,
a pretty
then,
big
then
amount.
on December 1st, then,
Yeah. But,
We have no more water.
But as far as how the software handles it, it's not the payment plan isn't something that's entered into the software.
Okay.
It's something that, staff
You
would
have to track separately?
Yeah,
Okay.
but there's a limited number of people. We're familiar with the names and
Yeah.
so on, it's not a,
But those are chronic ones, right? Not the COVID group?
sometimes it's one and the same.
Okay.
mhm.
I mean, our chronic ones are a lot of times the ones who are seasonal employees who are currently more affected by the COVID now than they
Right.
have been in the past.
Right.
So, you can't really paint any of them with one brush.
So what factors are we all agreed on? At some point, there will be shut off? Are we
Yes.
agreed on that?
We can't go forever.
90 days for
Well, that's my recommendation, 90 days puts them at the 1st of December,
December?
and and you have that 90 days to come up with an arrangement with the city. That would be my motion.
And if you
Or,
haven't,
or paid in full, I mean, obviously, paid
and
in
if
full.
you
but
haven't, that's when the shut-off would happen
shut off
in
happens,
December.
right? Yeah, and again, it could be $20 a month. I don't know what the numbers are, and I don't know what the arrearages are, but if you've got a payment plan and you just, so that we're not so complicated, we just throw it out there. You've got a $20 a month payment plan, you got a $30, and you got a $50. Which one can you afford?
Yeah. Well, we can craft the individual payment plans based on what they anticipate they can pay.
So if I may, I think this is a good step forward. I'm concerned about the December 1st deadline. And the reason I'm concerned about that one in particular is if they have failed to pay and then we go into December and they fail to pay, we're turning off the water right before Christmas.
Make it January 1. I don't care, I'm just throwing a number.
That's what I was gonna ask, is if,
By the
could
end
we
of
do it
the-
January
let's
1?
say by the end of the year.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, if we could do it January 1, that'd be a lot better, I think, for staff.
It's not Christmas anymore, it's the holiday season. Okay, I don't care, it could be 60 day, 90 day, 120, first of the year, it needs to be done.
Do we need a formal motion?
I think he just made it.
I move that we do 120 days, or January 1, for people to either pay in full or arrange with the city a payment plan.
I'll second that.
Any further permutations or comments?
Sounds good.
Okay, so they have the 120 days to come up with a payment plan.
Or pay.
Yeah, they've got to start, yeah.
Okay.
By then, they have to come up with a payment plan or pay it in full,
Or it turns off.
or the water is done.
Okay. Any further discussion?
We're gonna
Well, that's
send,
just number 1, we got to go to number 2 now.
we're gonna send Public Works out on New Year's Day to turn off water meters.
We'll do it later that week.
So that's that part. We have a motion and a second. All those in-
Aye.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And now we need the second part, right?
Yes. So the second part arises of a discussion that's happened several times over the years and actually came up more promptly at the meter program when we were discussing that, is throughout the year, we have someone who has a water leak at their home. And they, because of various reasons, the discovery may take a period of time where a significant amount of water is lost. And this can create a fairly large bill. Right now, we have a program that forgives, if they show that they have repaired the leak, it forgives a portion of their sewer costs.
All the sewer, right? It's all the sewer, isn't it?
It depends on the nature of the leak, but no, it's not all sewer. It's based on previous averages.
Okay.
You know, so for instance, if you normally use 6 units and you used 10 units, we wouldn't forgive 10 units, we would reduce it by 4 units.
Okay.
That sort of thing.
But we charge all the water. So
Right,
if you have
right.
somebody who has a 100-unit loss, you know, that can be several $100s, and that does create situations, and I've read some of the letters, where people are like, I'm a single mom, I'm raising 2 kids at home, I'm having a significant problem paying this bill. This is a real financial hardship. And they have fixed the leak, but in most cases, these leaks are not their fault. These leaks are situational to just leaks happen, as we've seen in our system. What we're proposing is that we actually quantify this a little bit and create if you will, a goodwill account, where if during the course of a year, and you only get one a year, so you have to judge if you got a bad leak, the next month, it's too bad, that we allow some forgiveness if they can demonstrate, and I've outlined some basic terms here, but if they can demonstrate that I hired a plumber, we dug up the ground, we fixed the leak. Yes, it was 100, 100 units of water, but it's taken care of, it's not happening again. You can see the second meter reading, it's been addressed, where we can actually forgive that water bill and charge them just the average water bill that they had in previous months. Allowing us to, both track, how much we're spending were we to do that, because that was a question that I believe Councilor Campbell had during the meter discussion, but also allowing us to not, this only happens a few times, a year, maybe more often than that, but sometimes these bills aren't, the loss of water isn't hugely substantial to the city. It's important, but it's not hugely substantial, but it can be devastating to a homeowner, or it can be devastating to a renter. And this would give us the ability to create some goodwill in the community and be able to absorb the loss and get a sense of what those losses yearly would be, which we'd report back to the council so that you could see, okay, are we really losing a ton this way, or is this just a drop in the bucket, but we're really able to take care of some, unfortunate circumstances for people. And it doesn't address the people who, leave a hose on. It doesn't address the people who, let the bathtub run for 3 or 4 days. What this is addressing, we'll give them kind of that same payback period to address those. But what this is really doing is creating a program that we could bring back to you in the form of ordinance that would allow us to forgive somebody's water bill.
So if somebody does leave the hose on or something, and then they come and say, the landlord replaced the floats and 2 toilets, and now I'm not losing as much water. I mean, so is this any remediation of water loss could be used as justification to?
It is the water loss that caused this big change. So if somebody left the hose on and games the system by calling a plumber and having them fix something in their house, we're not going to know that. We're not going to be able to judge that that's what happened. If people want to game the system, they're going to game the system. And there are ways that they could be doing that now, frankly. Really, at the end of the day, this is trying to allow us to help, honest people if something has happened.
So I guess I was asking, you used an illustration of, digging up and fixing pipe. Can it be as simple as a toilet repair that?
Yeah, it could be. If you're losing water because your toilet's broken and you hire a plumber who comes in and fixes your toilet and you can demonstrate that, that would be an acceptable repair. One of the things we'll have Scott sign off on what's an acceptable repair or not in terms of, one of the things he was concerned about is that he doesn't want this to be a way that people excuse not taking care of their system.
Like a toilet running, you should know when your toilet's running,
Right.
This should be sufficient where, okay, something's been fixed, repaired. If you've dug up the pipe, you need to do it correctly instead of maybe just throwing some heat sink around it and hoping it'll hold for another year before it blows again. Scott will be able to determine, okay, this is repaired correctly or should be, the receipts that we've gotten should be, sufficient. And it's a judgment call, I'll kind of direct Scott to be a little bit more lenient than less, just because we don't want to have to go onto private property and inspect each little piece. That's not what Scott wants to do. It's not good use of his time. But we want to be able to judge, okay, yeah, this happens every month. This guy's just got bad pipes and we'll fix them. That's where we have a discussion of, hey, you really need to do something. And again, this is one time a year. And I don't expect it to be used more than that handful of times that we do have this issue come up. But we've had this issue come up with people who cannot really afford it. And especially with COVID right now, this is a way for the city to quantify it until we have meters replaced and a instant detection system like the AMI meters that we've talked about. Until we have that in place, this is a good way to judge what it's actually costing the city.
So basically, this is a temporary program.
Well, so it could be temporary, or one of the discussion pieces when we talked about the difference between AMR and AMI was the valuation of how much do we have customers who lose water and that we end up having to charge.
We did have that.
If that will help us inform when I bring you the AMI costs in the meter project back, that will help you inform that decision.
Right, whether
You
that
know.
extra money is.
Exactly. If I say, hey, wow, we used $30,000 in goodwill last year,
Yeah.
well, maybe AMI is really worth it.
Right,
If we used $300 of goodwill last year, maybe it's not as a criticality as we
Yeah.
think it is.
Just as a quick side note for the future, if we do go with AMI, in light of the previous discussion about landlords and water bills and stuff, I would hope that a notice of an internal leak would be sent both to a renter and the property owner.
right.
From a side note for support from Public Works, I think from a Public Works standpoint, we'd rather, if somebody does have a $200, $300, $400 bill from a water leak, we'd rather them spend $200, $300, $400 verifying to us that they correctly fixed their problems than pay their
Paying us.
$400 to us and then
Yeah.
And it's
do
still
a
not
quick
fixed.
fix on their water system and be back into the same situation in a couple of years with us, which is also wasting water resources.
I think most cities I lived in the past had this kind of system already, so I support it.
So what we'll do then is we'll bring back the appropriate
Okay.
product to you for the next meeting, be it ordinance, resolution, et cetera. Resolution. I think it still might have to be an ordinance a little bit, but we'll talk about that.
It's already in the ordinance.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you don't need anything from us at this point.
Other than a consensus to bring that back at the next meeting.
I think we have that.
Okay.
Yep.
Bring it back.
All right, excellent.
Okay. There's some committee reports in your packet, just for informational, unless anybody has questions or thoughts.
Thank you for the amazing work, even though you weren't there for the last work day, but
No, I couldn't be
It-
there,
it looks fantastic.
but Greg stepped in for me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and then, boy, those women.
They're workers, aren't they?
They are workers.
All right. So, anybody else have any further, of the public, have any further comments for the council? All right, all right.
So we just wanted to give the council, we've been going for 3 weeks now.
On market,
on the
right.
Wednesday market. We just wanted to give the council some numbers
Okay,
on what we've done so far.
So we started week 1 with 11 vendors. Most of them are all new vendors, not ones that have returned from the past. We did have a couple. We had an estimated 200 visitors from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Week 2, we ended up with 16 vendors and 311 visitors. And just yesterday, we had 17 vendors and 333 visitors. If you're at the market and you see somebody wearing one of these, with our cool new logo, I'll show you the back, it's bigger.
Nice,
Yeah.
very nice.
That is a committee member and they can answer questions. We are, actually all day today, we've been discussing purchasing blue colored ones in pullover style and zip-up style with the logo on it to sell at the market. Yes, so one of our committee members, Carol Cassidy, actually designed the logo for us and stuff. So it's been going well. We finally got all of our fencing in, so we're completely fenced off, not half fence, half rope. Do you have anything you want to add, or do you want?
And right now, we're sitting, it looks like at just over $950 in gross revenue, so,
From vendors.
from vendors.
And
Great.
we're adding new ones each week, so the fencing keeps getting pushed back.
I think next week, we're pushing close to 20.
That's fantastic.
We just thought we'd give them,
Great.
an update.
And
So-
thank you again for giving us the opportunity.
Yeah.
We're having fun.
So are you happy with how it's going?
Yeah, so Eric and I actually on Tuesday, we went over with sidewalk chalk, just to make it a little bit easier. Even though the booths are marked,
Right.
because Mark had done that in the past.
Right.
With having to space them out differently, it was our lady in charge of actually putting the vendors in their spots. It was a little hard. So we went and actually marked which booths to use
Okay.
and numbered them.
Okay.
And that yesterday made it so much easier. Certain vendors kind of have that one spot they just really like.
Right.
So she's kind of got a list now of, okay, you know, they're in this booth, they're in this booth. So we can, if we have to move the fence back, then we can just add numbers, and it makes it so much easier, so.
Well, with new vendors, so many new vendors, a lot of them didn't realize it.
Right.
Right.
Right, yeah.
So, and then, you know, once don't have to space the vendors out so much anymore as we kind of move forward in phases, then we can go back to the regular, food spots and
Right.
stuff too. So that'll make it even easier then, but for now, we're sidewalk chalk.
Thank you. Anyone else? You have anything other to say, Jamie, back there? I can hardly see you.
I should have started my earlier comment with this, that, we're in full support of strong good neighbor ordinances, so I wanted to know that was our position. I just wanted to share whatever I can share as you guys develop your, ordinance or policies going forward. But we are in favor of good, strong public policy and ordinances, so I wanted you to make sure that I was clear on what our position was.
Thank you. Okay, city manager's report.
All right, I will try to get through this pretty quickly. The Umpqua Bank, we've hired a local contractor to create some functional office space there. This is not tying us to any decisions. We're just making it less banky. It has become a critical piece on how we deliver payments and functions for the library while closed. However, payments for the city and books to the library. That drive-through is incredibly popular, I am told, and it's something that in the long run, somehow I think we want to retain some of that service, and we'll have to consider that. The Interpretive Center, it's ours. They are sending us a deed to sign. At the last meeting, I was directed to do an appraisal, or not an appraisal, I'm sorry, an inspection. I wanted to know whether the city still wanted to go forward with the full inspection before we accept the building, or if we wanted to do the inspection as part of just owning the building, simply because the inspectors are pretty far out right now. I contacted them, we're still on the list, but they're far out. It is in Urban Renewal 1, that had come up earlier as a question. We can spend UR1 funds to remediate some of the problems. There are some problems, absolutely, and some of them are identified by ODOT in order to reduce the valuation. And then I think I also sent you the appraisal document from ODOT that goes through much more specifics. So I'm looking for, A, do we hold off ODOT while we get it inspected, knowing that that might be several months? And that does create some issues with, potentially moving some stuff around, and us being able to reopen and do anything with that space. Or do we accept the building, get it inspected afterwards, do kind of our own internal kind of figuring out what we need, knowing that we do have a pot of money that we didn't anticipate having. And I'll have some other things a little bit later in the executive session to add to that, which should not influence this vote at all, but will potentially provide some direction down the line, kind of post us getting the building.
If what we're talking about later provides for kind of work that needs to be done there potentially, then I personally wouldn't have any problem with delaying the inspection until afterwards. I guess the only heartburn would be if there isn't funding.
There appears to be.
Okay. And I know UR1 is not enough.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, right.
UR1's going to keep it going.
Yeah, right.
And I will say, I've talked with ODOT, there is nothing catastrophic
Right.
in the building.
Yeah, I agree.
No, there has not been deferred maintenance on this building in a long time, and we are going to have to start with deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
However, I think we've identified a source that will supply that income so that I am not worried about deferred maintenance in this building. It's the only building we own I'm not worried about deferred maintenance on.
And since I know for a fact that there was work done on the roof, that I think I would accept it as it is now.
We have consensus on that? You want a
Yep.
motion or?
I do need a motion
Okay.
to allow us to sign and accept the building.
Go ahead.
I make a motion, we sign and accept the building.
I second that. Any further discussion?
So we are getting it inspected.
After.
Right now,
So
you've directed me
regardless-
to get it, you've directed me to get it
Right.
inspected. Unless you tell me not to,
Yeah.
I'm still
Okay.
doing that. I was directed not to accept the building until the inspection
Right,
was complete.
right. And
And
you're
I'd
saying
rather
it's-
just get that done.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All
Aye.
those, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
All right, next, I don't know if any of you have noticed up front, we had a small incident with a fire truck and City Hall. The building is still here, but there's going to be some repairs, and I was hoping to talk to the chief today. I didn't. I apologize. Right now, their insurance is handling it. Ours has offered to step in if there's an issue there. There's a $2,500 deductible with ours, but presumably they would cover it. So we're waiting to see how this all fleshes out and what the repair. The only sticking point will be making sure that they repair it to a quality that meets the current codes and the needs. It is not built incredibly well, which was one of the discoveries. If it had been built correctly, it should have torn off the wing on the fire door. Instead, it tore off the front
Yeah,
stanchion on the door. So we want it built so that it doesn't do that again. Water meters, as Scott mentioned earlier, we are working on getting bid packages together for water meters. It is in the budget. Obviously, we're going to start with AMR, and we're going to start with a program to replace those over time. This prevents us from having to do the $1.2 million total package bid that we had, the big brouhaha. It is in the budget, so we're moving forward. And this should start to produce some results towards our goal of A, replacing the meters, but B, the water loss reduction. Along with the leak reduction, I think we're going to be really down where we want to be, which is a long-term goal. So getting that done quickly is quite nice. Council rules. So this was actually one of the topics that I pulled out of this month because I knew this meeting was going to go over a couple hours, and we'll bring it to you at a later time. What has been actually suggested is that we might do a workshop with council rules, kind of the employee policies and procedures, and some other kind of housekeeping policy stuff. We do want to refine those, and there are definitely some corrections that we want to make in the council rules. But in the meantime, we're kind of operating under those guidelines anyways, with me sending you the agendas for any additions or comments beforehand. So I don't think it is not incredibly urgent, but we do want to do it. We do want to clean those up a bit. Website overhaul. We're actually looking at possibly spending some COVID money on this, as apparently there are some resources tapped to do some website work. If you want to take a look at kind of where I'm targeting, not identical to, but really utilizing a lot of the technologies and tools that the Crestwell site is using. I've been reviewing and downloading the budgets and information from all the different municipalities, and I just am totally enamored with the Crestwell site. I'll probably, the rose will go off the bloom here in a while, but right now, it does some transparency tools in budgeting and in communication that I think are just wonderful. And I think, with Rita's help, she can make that into a really cool tool if we implement something like that here. So I'm looking forward to that. Code enforcement, obviously we do not have TCB on yet. There was a hiccup with them in training. I think they show back up tomorrow. And then Matt and I will finish up the pieces that we need to, and we'll get a code enforcement officer here as quickly as we can. In the interim, we do have a list of code enforcement issues now that Rita put together that allows us to, early next week, I'm going to run around, take some pictures, document it, and kind of run through the process of sending out some letters, as I want to see what that process looks like. I think it's been something I've been trying to do in bits and pieces here on the job, is run through a process that normally the city manager wouldn't do, but so that I get a firm idea of what that path, what that critical path is. And we'll be doing that with some code enforcement stuff next week. This is one of the big ones that I would like, as an action item, some direction on. I would like to start, so I've been looking at budgets from other municipalities. And one of the things that we don't have, that a couple places do, is we don't have a foundation program. We don't have a kind of city bequeathment focus, where if somebody feels very strongly about some piece of infrastructure or a park or a children's library or something like that, where they could leave an estate or a portion of their estate to. There are ways to go about doing this and modeling it after some of the ones that I've seen successfully. One of the things that some places have offered are kind of that free legal service to set that up. And I spoke to our city attorney, and that's certainly within the realm of our possibility. It would involve a little bit of expenditure at the beginning, but it's not very expensive. This is not a 5-year plan. This is a 25-year plan. This is something that's going to pay off for maybe 2 city managers from now, where we start really seeing resources being able to be put in large foundational accounts that could be earning interest and operating parks, operating libraries, and providing for large infrastructure improvements. But if you don't get something like this started, it never gets going. So I was hoping to get a motion of approval to move forward and put together a project or a product like this to bring back to you for formal approval.
So how is the liability handled if we're giving legal advice to people on their setting
We are
this up?
not. They are a
Okay.
client of the attorney. We're just paying that portion of the bill that
so we
would
just
cover
pay
our
somebody
request.
else, okay,
We've had that piece of property donated and other things in the past.
right.
It hasn't been financial. I mean,
This
speaking of that property, what do we do with it?
it's for sale,
Okay.
and we're asking. It's for sale.
Okay.
I'll talk about it at
All
the
right.
executive session. It's for
So
sale.
It does happen. We just haven't had a foundation set up.
Yes,
Right.
and this would be more something that I could create a program, create some artwork, a website around, and actually do some outreach to people to say, hey, especially if you have no heirs, if you feel strongly about the city, and you feel strongly about, say the library or a park, this is a way to put the city in your last intention.
Yeah, like Schnitzer in the performing arts.
Exactly.
Yeah, we just need one.
Timing-wise, does this make sense in your overall picture of all the things that you need to do?
Yes.
Is this a good time for that?
Yes. Yes, I think this is, because I don't think this is a tremendous reach to get going. And the sooner we get this going, again, this is not a 5-year thing.
Yeah.
Although we could have some 5-year, but this is really a 25-year thing. Isaac Walton League.
Wait,
Sorry.
You were asking for action, and Mark, I think, made a motion?
That's right.
And we're sitting hung?
Yeah, right, we don't have a second yet, I don't think.
I'll second it.
All right, so now we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
We've got
carries.
that seal out there. That was a donation.
Yeah, it was.
So it does happen.
Speaking of donations, Isaac Walton League, the ball is in their court, as you will. I've provided them all the documentation. We're just waiting to hear back. This is for the Isaac Walton League space and the 10 acres to be able to do the Lynch Slough Trail. It still won't get the full trail all the way up the way we want it. There's some easements that we need to acquire, and we'll work on that. But this gets us a long way. The only, the commitments are the commitments that we previously made as a city. So I think we're pretty comfortable with, we just need them to sign off and we'll be done.
So they have indicated that they're fine with the commitments that we made, because I know that was kind of a hang-up for a while.
So the last piece of agreement that we signed, the letter of intent,
Yeah.
we've met all of those conditions, I believe.
Okay.
Obviously they could change their mind, but I believe that we have in good faith met all of them, and it's just now a matter of signing on the dotted line and getting things moving. I imagine there will still be some negotiation around the final wording, but it'll be minor in intent. We have a request from OCCC for sponsorship for Leadership Lincoln. We already have some money budgeted out of the UR1 funding for scholarships for the business program. This wouldn't be a stretch to just use some of that funding, especially since I'm not sure how strong the business program is going to be during this time. It's not a lot of money, and I don't know that I don't even know what Leadership Lincoln looks like. I was surprised that they're trying to do it, considering it's a networking opportunity function, and networking over Zoom is pretty much impossible. So, but nonetheless, I just wanted to make sure that, everyone was okay if we did offer scholarships, if we talked to OCCC and they did have Waldport members who were interested.
So we do have the option of saying, not this year, but when networking returns.
And that's actually not a horrible idea, frankly, because I don't know how well this class is going to be. My inclination is to send our planner, for example, but I'm not going to send her this first. Once COVID has relieved and we're back to, hopefully, some semblance of normalcy, I think that will be a very valuable tool for her, but I just don't know how you do a program like this when you can't sit and network.
So what's the,
Plus, it's like $650 for the class.
yeah, I think so. What's the wish of the council? Now or later, I guess is the question, or not at all. I guess there's three options.
Yes.
If this involves our renewal flexibility, renewal, we make that final decision.
Except we already have the
It's already,
allocation.
yeah, I think it's already
Yeah.
budgeted. I don't think this is a substantial change. It's just whether the council is willing to, we will have to do if we spend money on the interpretive center, we're gonna have to have a UR meeting.
Right.
So we could tie it up then.
Kind of what I was thinking.
Thoughts?
Wait,
Want to make that a motion? Or are you just
I,
throwing it
I,
out there?
it just, yeah, that was just conversational.
I don't know here one way or the other.
I don't have a strong opinion.
I don't either.
And if I have a strong opinion, I'll voice it.
What?
Well, I think Dan makes a good point about because I think it is primarily, I mean, I know there's learning that happens, but it also, main value of it, I think, is meeting everybody
Yeah.
and making those connections, especially for new people. And the planner, for instance, would be great for her.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
I don't think you need to make a motion if the answer is just wait.
Oh,
I think if you want us to go ahead, a
Yeah,
motion would be
okay,
appropriate,
all
but I don't think you have to take any action if
Okay.
like, we'll pass for now.
Just wait. Let's hold off.
Okay, we'll just not do anything. Open space.
All right, open space, I just wanted to give you a heads up. We're gonna be maybe doing some Scott's gone, but we're gonna be doing some grading, sloping, and marking off some spaces of where some of the stuff that we've identified is going to go, so that we can start seeing a sense of it, and then start getting some bids on what that looks like. We do have a small amount to spend this year. Next year, we will budget for the bids, so that we can actually, next summer, actually really start putting some stuff in place. and we will start trying to, identify the track and do a little bit of ground prep work. I just wanted to let you know that that was all going to be happening. Luba, it has been appealed back to Luba, obviously, and at this point now, we're just waiting until Luba decides on the case. There will be, of course, additional attorney fee costs, and some additional planning costs have already been incurred due to the remand and the challenge and the process. So that's just a heads up. It does cost us quite a bit when we go through these. So
This is unbelievable to me.
We may not be remanded, they may make a final decision.
I really hope so.
But we've been through this hoop 3 times now.
Yes,
And
exactly.
at what, we're close to 15,000?
It is over 10, it is, yes.
So at some point, best interest of the city.
Unfortunately, this is her right to do.
Have we determined whether Luba has to accept it, or can they do like other courts and just say, there's no merit here, we won't accept it?
I have, that's a really good question. I have no idea, but my guess is that they have to accept it if she's filed the appeal and then rule on the appeal.
But they don't have to remand it, so they might just rule on it.
I really hope that's the case, but window covering, we are going to do, as soon as he gets back to me, we're going to try to do a couple window coverings here at the lower windows for the offices over there where they're a little higher, just so that you can't read information that's left on the desk. And then some coverings in my office, just because I'm baking in the sun. These are really nice. If you haven't seen them, they're the ones that are in the sheriff's office. They're white on the outside, but when you're in the office, it's opaque. You can look right through. So it's really quite nice. Mask and face coverings. This is just kind of a reminder for businesses. We have a lot of mask and face coverings available for business use that are coordinated through the chamber. There's a website to order them, and we're storing them here at City Hall. So if you wonder why we have this huge stash of masks and face shields, that's why.
You know how much they are, the face shields?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I've got 2 add-ons and 1 last issue. So
Yeah, there's no cost to it.
Can the public access them, or does it?
no, so these are the ones for businesses. So I've talked to you about Mrs. Schufelt's tree on the lot. Councilor Campbell's actually gone
Yeah, I went and
looked at it. It is substantial. I have not gotten anybody to volunteer to take the wood because it's such a substantially large tree.
It's big.
Also, the brush is very overgrown. At this point, my hesitation was this was a very nice old widow who was really struggling to understand me describing the problem to her. I have kind of had a problem trying to cite her, but at this point, I need direction from the council because we do have some concerned citizens who have a very valid, code complaint, and we need to take action in one way, shape, or form on this. I do know that she does have an attorney, in fact, or her son is with her, so we could send the complaint on, and I think he could address it. But I do feel that we're at the point now where, without finding anybody else to take it, we do need to take action.
So, the complaints from the neighbors have indicated that they would like to see the city start levying fines if it's not removed.
They would like it addressed.
Of course.
And so their only recourse, our only recourse, is to issue fines to
Okay.
make them address it.
What kind of tree is it?
It's a big tree.
Yeah,
And it's a pine that's probably got about a 4-foot girth on it. And it was fallen, has been felled, or whatever the term is for these loggers use, in a pretty decent manner, so it was between 2 occupied homes on a vacant lot. But it's become so dry, it's tinder. I mean, it would light like that, because it's a dead tree and it's been sitting there. The growth is I couldn't walk around in it without getting cut by blackberry brambles, but I did. And it needs to be removed, there's just no getting around it.
The challenge is, so Dutch passed away in, I want to say, March. And he had hired somebody to fall the tree, but the idea was that it would be left a season and then they would cut it up for firewood at some later date. The problem is nobody's maintaining the property now. And, we really do have, the neighbors have complained about the fire issue, that there is a significant fire issue.
So like the firewood people in Seal Rock, nobody like that wants to come?
They haven't returned my call, so I'm a little frustrated. I talked to a few other people. Everybody who went and took a look at it kind of had Mark's response, which was, yeah, no, it's a little bit much.
No thanks.
Had they limbed it so that it was flat on the ground,
Right.
but
It
it's,
sits precariously because when it was falling, it has rested on some pretty large limbs. And the stump or the trunk is somewhat suspended. So it's gonna take a skilled woodsman to get in there and do it.
we did get permission
Maybe a
from the
couple
family to
$1,000,
give
I'm
away the
sure.
wood, but that doesn't solve the issue for us.
Well, since she has a son who's an attorney evidently, right?
No, attorney in
Okay.
fact, that just means he's
Okay.
the legal representative.
Okay,
rep.
okay,
I had to look that up.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just messaged my son, to see if he would look at it, so once more, if you ever see somebody,
Okay.
Oh,
if he might be very interested in it.
And he likes the various places.
Yeah.
is he a skilled woodsman?
Well, his general skills are crazy, huh?
Well,
I'll touch base with you afterwards and,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I think we do need to proceed
okay.
Yeah.
with our normal procedure.
I will do so reluctantly because
Yeah.
this is a very sweet old lady, but I think we do need to proceed. Food truck. So on Facebook the other day, Game Time Food Truck was talking about the challenges in finding a space in Waldport. I was potentially interested in trying to, I first directed them to Beachcombers for Wednesday market, but I think they're already booked on Wednesdays. I was potentially looking at the potential revenue of offering them a spot on Sunday, which is what the day they indicated they might have in the community center parking lot. As just a place to kind of sell their wares. I'm a little bummed it's not during the week because I would really
Yeah.
love to walk over and just get a taco, but I just wanted your okay. If, you saw a food truck or several food trucks there on a weekend or sometime. I don't want to interfere with the Wednesday market folks, so Wednesday will be sacrosanct. But I do want, potentially, I have to look at sources of income for the community center. And that might be one of them. Right now, our code says only on private property.
So is Sunday the only day they have available for?
Sunday was the day that they offered to come.
Seems like it's pretty quiet in town on Sunday.
That's what I thought too, but,
So how do our current
maybe that's what it is.
restaurateurs and food service places of business feel about?
I have no idea. I'm sorry,
Because that brings up the
what would-
issue we talked about with offices.
Because,
Kinda same
yeah, I
thing.
mean, are we competing with Chubby's and Vicky's and,
Well, Chubby's was big, when they weren't there, they began competing with others. I mean, it's,
Yeah, but it wasn't the city.
but it's not on
Well,
city
yeah, it's
property
not the
and,
city.
yeah.
I think if we made it available to anybody, we're not just, I'm not saying let's do just game time. I'm saying if food carts wanted a place to sit and we could charge them a reasonable fee to sit someplace, and we've got land that's just sitting there, I wouldn't mind finding a way to, especially during this time, be able to facilitate that.
Yeah, I think that's,
so what would be the fee?
That I would still figure out. I need to make some calls and figure out what would be appropriate.
I know that Jesse is talking with the high school pharmacy people about setting up something for food trucks too, so you might touch base with him.
Okay. And then lastly, we have had a request for a trash can. I sent you all the costs. I'd like to go ahead and, it actually does meet a pretty significant need over there. I'd like to just go ahead and do it. I just wanted to make sure there was no objections before I, spend $1,000 on a trash can, which, by the way, is ridiculously high, and I get that, but it is what it is.
And the public really wants it because there's been people picking up trash in that area. We're talking about between the post office and it's, the day I was over there scouting out the area, there was a lot of trash on the ground because we've got 2 parking lots and the bus stop over there where there's no place for anybody to put any trash out. And
Doesn't the Parks Committee, was it in their minutes that I saw a request about more trash cans
Right,
along
that
101
that was
also?
on 101, yeah. There's some blocks that don't have any, but.
there's none on the 34 at all, so.
So
Yeah,
we're
give them
looking
the
at that.
price,
Scott and I
yeah.
have had a lot of conversations about trash cans and their costs and the time it takes to pick them up.
Yeah,
And so likely we're gonna be coming back with a proposal. I still need to have a conversation with Dahl about emptying them potentially. So likely I'll be coming back with a proposal as we look at what the costs and how we might do that.
I guess I would like to see maybe an overall idea of the need for the whole city. Like where are we at for,
rather than.
and not go one
at a
by
time,
one
Yeah.
and make a plan and then, yeah.
I'd like to address the litter problem now though because it is so bad over there.
I'll do whatever you guys want me to do.
I make a motion, we go ahead and do this one trash can. We can solve the other litter problems of the city. Get it started now. Why wait?
Is there a second?
Trash cans are not gonna get any cheaper.
Is it dying for lack of a second? Looks like. All right,
So I'll put together a more comprehensive plan.
so maybe sooner rather than later since there's a need at
Yep,
that particular place.
plan for trash.
Plan for trash.
Now we can't do the city foundation because we give them a new task.
We can name it after someone.
I just got a message about that tree also. I guess Steve will be calling me the wood guy too.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay.
So you guys can't do it and
Yeah, first come, first serve, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
and we still have to they still have a brush problem, but, that tree is a little bit more than people think it is.
So whatever notice we're gonna send them should address
It's
the brush as
longer
well.
than this room by another half a room.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I sent you all a picture of it.
Yeah, exactly.
My son's a Class C Sawyer in the Navy. He graduated his corpsman training last week, but he's in hold. They won't let him take leave because of the virus. His new training doesn't start till the end of October, so he's just in between. He has a 36-inch bar chainsaw at our house, and he's trained and equipped, but he's just skateboarding around Fort Sam Houston, waiting
I was just wondering.
for something to do.
There's probably a ban on using chainsaws right now, isn't there, for fire hazard?
During certain times,
Pardon me?
during certain times.
Okay.
There's an industrial fire level.
Yeah.
But it usually has to do with the heat index, and we don't usually pass that mark. 10 miles up the river,
Well, this is what, 5 miles up, 4 miles
is it?
up?
Well, maybe it is.
It's
Hey,
Virginia,
by the
it's
way-
on Virginia Place in,
Yeah.
Hoffman Drive.
Yes,
Rita,
ma'am.
Received a notice from Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, red flag warning and heat advisory issued to Lincoln County,
Oh,
which just came in. Not just came in, but it came in within the last hour. So basically, the National Weather Service has issued a red flag warning and heat advisory for Lincoln County beginning Friday through Sunday.
because we're gonna hit 72 on Saturday.
Where conditions are favorable for rapid fire spray, which may threaten
may-
life and property.
A crooked number, 80.
Huh.
So anyway, that's, I just, to put that
Right.
into the
Right.
It would be foggy is what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
102 in the valley and
And 55 here with fog.
That's all I have.
Okay, so next is council comments or concerns?
Yeah, are we having any mayoral debates before the election?
Somebody asked about that, me that too.
Did they?
Yes, they did.
I thought I was being glib.
Hasn't even
No?
closed for filing, still 2 weeks to file.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to wait till we see
You're a
how
little
many
premature.
candidates we have.
There
yeah.
could be others.
There
That's
could be
right.
others.
We
Greg,
haven't- we
Greg
have-
Dunn was asked and he gave a waffling answer.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like,
He's
I've had so many
Thinking about it.
messages over that, oh my gosh.
I can sit on a fence better than anyone.
So Mark's running too?
Let's
Please
all
don't-
run.
Please don't. Well, maybe I should do that so I can give up my seat.
That's not how you get off the council, Mark.
Well, and we haven't participated in any of those forums because we have never had competition for a long time. But since there will be competition, at least two, we probably should think about that. Our citizens are interested.
It'll be interesting how we make that happen
Yeah,
in a venue if there are that many citizens interested.
well, that remains to be seen.
700?
Yeah, really. They may feign interest, but will they tune in?
Yeah, exactly. Any other council comments or concerns?
I have a couple things. Last week I was able to meet with Ryan Voigt, the new COG director,
Okay,
and bend his ear for a little while, and then Dan took 3 times as long because I had to go to
It's
an
me.
appointment, but I wanted to say I'm really interested in developing a civic participation course for the high school, OCCC, something, maybe with an idea that, and I understand that probably this school year wouldn't be ideal, but in the future, maybe an idea that if they attend the meetings from September through the whole year, they get credit, and that would include coming to budget meetings and stuff. It seems to me that most of the younger people I know, under 40, don't have, they're fearful of a meeting run by Robert's Rules of Order, which we aren't sticklers for by any means.
right.
But it is a little intimidating to start civic engagement. And for me, I would be hopeful that our civic engagement kind of thing would increase to the point where every seat is contested and citizens
Exactly,
get a chance to hear different voices and choose who they want.
right.
And so I would really like to see us do something where, maybe we end in May with Counselor for a Day program or something. And yeah,
Interesting.
anyways, something to put on a burner somewhere.
Great, good idea. Anything else from the council?
They don't teach civics in school any longer.
No, and it used to be, even if you didn't take a course, that if you were in the chess club, they had meetings that they ran with, the faculty advisor would have them run the meetings with, some form of order, and they would learn that stuff. And now everything's so informal that this kind of environment, I think, scares them
It
to,
does. We need to-
which is kind of funny once you get on this side of the table, that it's,
It usually takes some
issue.
significant, oftentimes emotional event
Yeah,
to stir somebody or instigate somebody into
coming.
participation, but
When I first came to this council, it was intimidating. I'd never done that before, and it wasn't easy. Good idea. Anyone else have anything? If not, we'll move to executive session. I think that's what's next.
Yep.